So just like a poll, raise your hand if you don't have to tell me your description, but raise your hand if you said there is not a difference between those two things. Raise your hand. Okay, raise your hand if you said there is a difference between those two things. Okay, so I will tell you that there is a difference. There's a huge difference, and we're going to talk about what the difference is and why. So let me pull up those two numbers. Oh, come on. Be nice to me. Okay. Kylie, make sure that when you're answering that you hit reply and then type your answer. If you're typing in like this little tiny box, it's not going to let you reply. And that might be what you're doing. Okay, so I asked, what is the difference between -4 squared without parentheses and -4 squared with parentheses? So if we were to simplify this first one, the answer would be -16. That might be shocking to some of you, but if I read this, I want you to ask yourself, what is being squared here? Is 4 being squared or is -4 being squared? Yes, just 4, right? So if I square 4, that would be 16, but what's out in front of it? A negative. So my answer would be -16. The second option, what is being squared in the second option? Yeah, go for it. -4. Well, what's -4 times itself? +16. So these are actually going to give you two different answers. This one's going to give you -16, and this one is going to give you +16. And you need to realize that because that's going to change a lot of the type of things that we are doing today in my class, okay? Today. Does anybody know what makes something an expression instead of an equation? Those are two very different things. Yes. On an expression, there is not an equal sign. That's definitely the key word here. For expressions, we cannot have equal signs. For equations, we can have equal signs, obviously. So if we're going to define an expression, I'm going to call it a math sentence, and I'm terrible at spelling, sentence, right? Yeah, it'll get up there in a second. A math sentence that has no equal sign. And I'm putting an exclamation point for emphasis there. So we can use numbers, we can use operations, we can use exponents, variables, all of that stuff, as long as it doesn't have an equal sign. Make sure you're under your name sign. I'm not under content library. Click that module 1, yep, and then click lesson number 2. There you go. And you should be able to type on there. Okay. Yes, Bryn. You just double click in a different area. Yep. Okay. So then substitution. Someone tell me where in their life that they've heard that word besides this class. What area of your life have you heard the word substitution? Or substitute. That could also be an option. Sure, yeah. Like a what? Like a replacement. So like if Miss Simpkins is sick, who comes in my place? A substitute, right? If you play a sport, what happens if like you need to go out of the game because you need water or you're hurt or something? Substitute, right? So substitute in math is the same thing. So if I were to tell you that the letter A is equal to 2, what could we do for all the A's in that expression? What could we substitute it with? a 2. So anywhere we see an A, we would replace it or substitute it with a 2. So we could replace, oh, I can't spell. Replace all A's with 2. Yes, sir. Yeah, double click. The box may not show up exactly where you need it to show up, which is unfortunate, but you can move the box around. Does that make sense? Okay. So if I'm asking you guys to evaluate these, meaning we're going to get one number answer, there's 3 steps. The first step is exactly the word I was just using, which says substitute. So any variable that I give you a number for, you're going to substitute that number. This is so important, and we kind of talked about this on the bell work. You must use parentheses around any number that you substitute. And then once we do it, Jonathan, I'll help you in just a second. Once you do that, you want to follow the order of operations. Meaning, which I hate, you guys know this, PEMDAS, but as long as you write it like this, I'm fine with it. Jonathan, let me double check on my end to make sure your notebook looks good here, and then I'll see if it's something on my computer or your computer. Okay, so I see it on my computer. Jonathan, are you in class notebook? Do you see it on the left, like, that's what I want to make sure first. Are you in class notebook? Okay, on the left, do you see content library, and then underneath that where it says your name? Okay, you're fine. Says no. Oh, so when you click on your actual name, Jonathan, and right underneath your name, a folder should pop up. Click on that folder. Okay, just hang tight. Let me get everybody started on 2 problems, and Jonathan, I'm gonna have you share your screen with me so I can see what you're looking at. Okay, so just sit tight for just a moment. Yes. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Number 1 says AB squared plus C, but then it says A is 2, B is 4, C is 7. So that means wherever I see an A, what am I going to put there? A 2. Wherever I see a B, I'm going to put a 4. Wherever I see a C, I'm going to put 7. You must use parentheses. I'm going to yell it at you forever. And it will make sense why when we get to number 5. Okay? So let's do number 1. So A is worth 2. So I'm going to replace that with my parentheses. B we said was 4. I'm going to replace that with my parentheses. And notice that it's squared. Plus C is 7. So now all of my letters now have a value. So A is 2, B is 4, C is 7. And we want to follow order of operations. So what would be the first step in our order of operations if we are following them. Yes. That makes sense. Yes, parentheses technically comes first, but there's nothing to do inside those parentheses. What is being squared? Bryn? 4. So what is 4 squared? 16. Yeah, squared just means 4 times itself. So then we want to jump down to our multiplication division. I do see multiplication. 2 times 16. That's a tough one. What is it? 32. And then 32 plus 7 would be 39. Now I am fine if you guys want to physically write on a sheet of paper your work and then put your answers in the OneNote notebook. That is totally up to you. Whatever makes you more happy, okay? As long as I see that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, I'm fine with that. But I do need to see something in that notebook, okay? And I'll leave that up there for just a moment, and then we'll just pause for a second, and we're going to work on number 2. And then, Jonathan, I didn't forget about you. I'll come back to you in a second. We're about to do it together, but if you want to go ahead and get a head start, you can. That's weird. I don't know. It might be because you're so zoomed in. That could be, which is not a bad thing, but that could have something to do with it. I'm not too sure though. Okay, so let's look at number 2. Number 2 says 3x squared minus 4x, but it also tells me that x is worth -2. So wherever I see it, oops, that didn't mean to do that. Wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace that x with a -2 in parentheses. So 3 times -2 squared minus 4 times that -2. So again, if we're following order of operations, we want to use that exponent first. So -2 times itself. What's -2 times -2? 4, +4, beautiful. Minus 4 times -2. And we looked at a problem that's similar to this yesterday, or I say yesterday, meaning like the last time that I saw you. So what do we want to do? We want to do the 2 sets of multiplication first. So we want to do 3 times 4, which is, don't be shy, 12. Yep. And 4 times -2, which is -8. So we have 12 minus -8. And we talked about integers on Friday. What happens to that minus negative? It turns to good, Zan, turns to a positive. So 12 plus 8 would be 20. Beautiful. Yes, Bryn. Not like letting me talk anything. Oh. You're trying to type instead of draw. So go to draw. And then you got to click back to that guy. Okay, so here's what I'll have you do. I'm going to give you like a little bit, probably more than like 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm going to have you guys work on numbers, and I'm going to circle them on the board. 3, 5, and then number 2 down here at the bottom. And those are on the board circled for you. Okay, so let's look at number 3. So I saw a lot of you at least setting up the problem correctly, which is a positive. I had a few people ask about where are the parentheses, all that sort of stuff. So let me try and make myself the most clear I can. Anytime you substitute a number, it needs to have parentheses around it. So this one says a squared b minus b squared. So instead of an a, what number am I going to write? A 3, correct? So in that 3, or around that 3, I'm going to put parentheses. Now the a, what's happening to the a? It's getting squared, right? It's getting squared. It's the first thing, so I got to make sure I include that. It's also being multiplied by b. But remember, I'm replacing b. I'm replacing b with -4. Beautiful. Does anyone have any questions about that first part? Okay, let's replace the rest. So we have a minus sign. And I have another b. So I have another set of parentheses. And I'm going to stick in my -4. But that b is being squared or multiplied by itself, right? And we'll do that eventually. So that is what you should see as your first initial setup of the problem, okay? Then we want to start following our order of operations. So we want to use exponents first. So the 3 is being squared. 3 times itself would be 9. We still are multiplying it by -4. We still have a minus sign. But I now have -4 times itself, which would be positive 16. Do I feel okay so far? Okay. If you're like super, I don't know what's going on, you got to let me know. I can't read your mind. Then we have multiplication. 9 times -4 would be -36 minus 16. And this is something that we talked about on Friday. So integers. If we're at -36 and we're subtracting, we're moving to the left. We're moving to the left 16 places, and we would end up at -52. I saw some people have -20. That's okay. That's an integer problem issue. That's not a solving expressions issue. So make sure -36 minus 16 takes us all the way back to -52. So I'll let you sit with that one for a second before we go over number 5. If you have a question, I need you to ask me now rather than us get 3 problems from now and you not know what's going on. Okay, so let's look at number 5. Number 5 is a tricky one because you'll see that y has what in front of it? A negative, right? That y has a negative in front of it, and that's important. So if I'm substituting 2 in, I am not going to put that negative in the parentheses. That negative is not with the y. What would be there if the negative was supposed to be with the y? Parentheses, right? And there's not any. So we need to make sure that that negative stays outside of those parentheses. So -3 times x, which is -4, times y, which is 2. So that's how I would set up that problem before I start solving. So we want to square 2, which is 4, but we cannot forget about this negative we need to bring down. Minus 3 times -4 times 2. And Zion asked me a good question. Oh, sorry, Brain, go for it. For sure. Positive. Okay. Okay, what, Brain? Why is there not because I had already solved this 2 squared, and that was my result. Anytime I get a result, I usually just drop the parentheses off. Okay. Zion asked me a good question. On this step, we want to multiply these 3 numbers together first, and then worry about the -4 minus. So 3 times -4 would be -12. -12 times 2 would be -24. I'll let you sit with that for a second. What? Okay, so what would I explain what I would do next? Oh. Yes. I hate that. I'm sorry. I hate whoever taught you that. It was probably Mr. Jeffries. Who was it? Mr. Nina. It's okay. I don't hate it, but I don't like keep change because then it gets confused with keep flip change and then like all the changes, right? So, but what he's saying is when you have minus a negative, we can change it to positive there. That sounds a little bit more mathy. So -4 plus 24 is what? 20, correct. You can use keep, change, change if you remember keep, change, change. That's fine. And then I'll keep that up there. The last problem that I asked you to work on is number 2. And number 2, we have 2 different variables. We have G and we have H. And it tells us out to the side that G is worth 10 and H is worth 4. So wherever I see a G, I'm going to replace with a 10. So we have 10 squared plus 2 times 4. 10 squared would be 100. 2 times 4 would be 8. So our result here would be 108. Woo!